The air in Richmond Palace hung heavy with the scent of wax and worry, a miasma that clung to the tapestries and seeped into the very stones of the ancient walls. It was March 1603, and Queen Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen, the Gloriana who had ruled England for over 4 decades, was dying. Her court, a glittering constellation of nobles, advisers, and sycophants, buzzed with whispers and fear, their eyes darting to the shadowed corners of the great hall as if death itself might slink forth. But the truth of Elizabeth's final days was not merely a tale of mortal frailty. It was a story woven with secrets, betrayal, and a desperate struggle to preserve a legacy that had defined an era. Elizabeth, at 69, was a shadow of the vibrant monarch who had once danced with suitors and outwitted foreign kings. Her body, once adorned with the finest silks and jewels, now seemed to shrink within her gowns, her skin pale as parchment, her eyes dimmed by pain. The court physicians, with their endless vials of tinctures and muttered Latin, could do little to ease her suffering. They spoke of melancholy, of a body weakened by years of relentless duty. But the whispers among the maids and grooms told a different tale, one of poison, of treachery, of a queen whose very existence threatened the ambitions of those circling her throne. The story begins in the winter of 1602, when Elizabeth, still sharp of mind despite her failing body, sensed the shifting tides of loyalty. Her court was a chessboard, and she had always been the master player. Yet now pieces were moving against her will. Robert Cecil, her cunning Secretary of State, was her most trusted advisor, but even he could not be fully trusted. His father, Lord Burghley, had taught him the art of survival in a court where favor was fleeting, and Cecil's eyes were already turning toward the future, toward James VI of Scotland, the Protestant heir who waited eagerly across the border. Elizabeth's final days were marked by a strange, almost otherworldly defiance. She refused to lie in bed, as if by standing upright she could hold Beth at bay. Her ladies-in-waiting, led by the loyal but wearied Lady Scrope, pleaded with her to rest, but Elizabeth would only sit upon a cushioned stool, her back rigid, her gaze fixed on some unseen horizon. "I am not sick," she declared, her voice thin but edged with steel. "I am merely tired of this world." But the truth was darker. In her private chambers, away from the prying eyes of the court, Elizabeth was haunted by visions. Dreams of her mother, Anne Boleyn, her head cradled in her lap, whispering of betrayal. These were not mere fancies of an ailing mind. They were warnings, rooted in a truth Elizabeth could not voice. The Queen's decline began in earnest after a banquet in February 1603. The French ambassador, de Beaumont, had noted her unusual pallor that night, her refusal to eat more than a few bites of sugared almonds. Rumors swirled that the almonds had been tampered with, laced with a slow poison that drained her strength without leaving a trace. The source of such treachery was unclear. Some pointed to Catholic agents, still bitter over Elizabeth's Protestant reign. Others whispered of factions within her own court, eager to clear the path for James. The Spanish, too, had not forgotten their humiliation at the hands of the English Navy in 1588, and their spies were known to lurk in London shadows. Yet poison was only one thread in the tapestry of Elizabeth's end. Her mind, once a fortress, was crumbling under the weight of her own legend. She had crafted an image of invincibility, a goddess queen who needed no husband, no heir, no equal. But now, with death's shadow creeping closer, that image was a prison. She could not name a successor without admitting her mortality, and yet her silence fueled chaos. Cecil, ever the pragmatist, had been secretly corresponding with James for months, ensuring a smooth transition. Elizabeth knew this. She was no fool. But she could not bring herself to confront him. To do so would be to acknowledge the end, and Elizabeth Tudor was not ready to surrender. In her final weeks, Elizabeth's court became a stage for a grim performance. The Privy Council met in hushed tones, their debates punctuated by the Queen's occasional imperious commands. She refused to discuss the succession openly, though she dropped cryptic hints. "My seat has been the seat of kings," she said to Cecil one evening, her voice barely above a whisper. "I will not have it stained by haste or greed." Cecil, with his pinched face and calculating eyes, bowed and said nothing, but his mind was racing. He knew the vultures were circling, nobles like the Earl of Essex's old allies who still nursed grudges, and ambitious newcomers who saw opportunity in the Queen's weakness. One of the shocking truths of Elizabeth's final days was the role of her cousin, Lady Arbella Stuart. Arbella, a potential claimant to the throne, was a quiet but persistent presence at court. Some believed she was Elizabeth's preferred heir, a woman who shared her blood and her fierce intellect. Yet her ambition was a double-edged sword. In early 1603, whispers reached Elizabeth that Arbella had been approached by agents of the Catholic faction, offering to support her claim if she converted. Elizabeth, whose reign had been defined by her defiance of Rome, was enraged. She summoned Arbella to her chambers, and what passed between them was witnessed by no one but the flickering candles. Arbella emerged pale and shaken, and Elizabeth never spoke of her cousin again. As March wore on, Elizabeth's body began to betray her in earnest. Her throat swelled, making it difficult to swallow, and her voice, once a weapon of command, was reduced to a rasp. The physicians spoke of a settling of humors, but the maids who tended her whispered of something more sinister, a growth perhaps, or the work of poison finally taking hold. Elizabeth's refusal to lie down became a symbol of her stubborn will, but it also hastened her end. She stood or sat for hours, her legs swelling, her breath shallow, as if by sheer force of will she could outlast death. The court was now a cauldron of intrigue. Cecil's spies reported rumors of a plot to seize the throne for Arbella, or even to restore Catholic rule under a foreign prince. The Spanish ambassador, Don John de Tassis, was seen lingering too long in the halls of Richmond, his smile too smooth, his words too carefully chosen. Elizabeth, though weak, was not blind to these dangers. She summoned her old friend, Sir Walter Raleigh, now out of favor but still loyal, and tasked him with ensuring London's defenses. "Guard my city, Walter," she whispered, her hand trembling as it rested on his. "Let no man steal what I have built." Raleigh, his own star dimmed by years of rivalry with Cecil, swore to protect her legacy, but even he could sense the tide turning. The final blow came on March 23, 1603. Elizabeth, too weak to stand, finally consented to lie upon a pallet of cushions in her privy chamber. Her ladies wept openly now, their fear no longer hidden. The Archbishop of Canterbury, John Whitgift, was summoned to pray at her side, but Elizabeth waved him away. "I need no priest to tell me how to meet my Maker," she said, her voice a thread of her former strength. But in her final hours, she spoke of her father, Henry VIII, and of her sister, Mary, whose bloody reign she had undone. "I have kept England free," she murmured, her eyes half closed. "Let that be my epitaph." The shocking truth of Elizabeth's death was not merely the possibility of poison or the machinations of her court. It was the silence she maintained to the end. She never named James as her heir, though Cecil and others pressed her. In her final moments, she raised her hand, a gesture some interpreted as a nod to James, others as a dismissal of the question itself. When she died in the early morning of March 24, 1603, the court erupted in chaos. Cecil, ever prepared, proclaimed James king before the body was cold, and the transition was swift, but not without blood. In the weeks that followed, Arbella was quietly removed from court, her ambitions crushed, and several suspected plotters vanished into the Tower. The official records of Elizabeth's death speak of natural causes, of a queen who simply wore out her mortal coil. But the whispers that lingered in Richmond's halls told a different story, one of a woman who fought not just death, but the betrayal of those she had trusted, the weight of a crown that had shaped her life, and the specter of a future she could not control.